Hello, YouTube. I hope everyone is enjoying or surviving their time at home. Understand that enjoyment during this time is a little bit difficult, so we each come up with our own ways of filling the time and finding things to do, and to keep ourselves positive and motivated. So for me, it's starting to record these YouTube videos. I don't know quite what the content is going to look like day to day or week to week, but I figure it'll be some combination of productivity or technology reviews. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my work from home setup and maybe some tips and tricks that you guys can use towards your own work from home setup for those of you who typically work in an office environment. So I'm not going to mention what it is that we're all going through right now because apparently if I say the name of it, the YouTube algorithm gets a little bit funny and I could get the video taken down, which I'm fully understand because there's a lot of fake information out there, a lot of misinformation that we want to make sure that only the appropriate information is getting disseminated. So listen to your local health authorities, listen to the WHO, listen to the CDC, listen to all of their recommendations. So with that, I'm going to give you a few tips in terms of what my work from home setup is like and what you can sort of think about for your own work from home setup. All the products that I'm going to be talking about, I'll go ahead and link to down in the description below. So if there's anything that you're interested in, feel free to click on it. I can't guarantee that everything is going to be in stock because I think most people have the same idea that I do about getting some of these items. So you may have to search around a bit. But anyway, with that said, for anyone who's working needs a setup where they're going to be doing a lot of video conferencing, you're number one going to need a solid webcam. So with that, the one that I've chosen is the Logitech Brio. It's a 4K webcam. Is it a little bit overkill? Yeah, probably, but I don't really I don't necessarily see that as being an area to skimp on. If you're going to be putting yourself out there, I mean, we see at better than 4K, so we want to make sure we're presenting the best version of ourselves to our digital audience. The camera is a little bit expensive. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $200, $250, somewhere around there. And it could be even more now that I think a lot of the cameras are sold out. But with getting a basic webcam, you really also can't go wrong with the Logitech C920. That's the one you see everywhere, and it's the one that most people end up getting. It's a 1080p webcam. It works perfectly fine. I would even recommend it if you are using a webcam on your laptop. The laptop webcams, I mean, the MacBooks I think are only at 720p, and some of your other Windows laptops are only 720p, and they're just not that great a quality. So getting your own separate webcam is going to be probably a good idea. With that, also the webcam placement. As you can see from this video, my webcam is pointed down at me, and I'm sure you've been in many video conferences where you know what it looks like when you see the camera's pointing up at them, and you get kind of like that from the chin up, and you're kind of looking up their nostrils, and it's just not a flattering angle. So a much more flattering angle for people is if the camera's pointing down at you, sort of at a downward angle. So whether you have a desktop setup like what I have, or whether you have a setup where you just have a laptop, getting that external webcam will give you a little bit more freedom to sort of place it where you need it to get the best angle for yourself. In addition to a solid webcam, having a good microphone is a good idea. I use the Blue Yeti Nano microphone, and it's a fairly basic microphone. It's good for podcasting, good for webcasting, and it just has a little bit higher quality than what you would have built into your webcam. Although the webcam microphones on some laptops is fine, but if you're really wanting the solid work from home setup, you want to get yourself your own separate microphone. And finally, in terms of the technology setup for your video conferencing, you want to have good lighting. So as you can see, I have a bunch of Philips Hue smart light bulbs in here that I have set to a sort of a daylight setting. And you'll notice I don't have any lights behind me. Having lights turned on behind me is going to cause a lot of shadows, and it's not going to look good. So for those of you who want to up your lighting game a little bit more, the other thing you can get yourself is one of these. It's a key light. I'm not sure if it's the exact term that you would use to call it a key light, but it's just a little portable light that you can use. I'll put a link to this one down in the description below as well. This one's from LumaCube, and it just gives you a little bit more control over where you want the lighting on your face, and it's very useful if you're in like a dark room or just want to give a little bit more professionalism to yourself during your video conferencing. They even make some of these that you can just stick on the back of your laptop screen, and they're portable. You can charge them via USB and just carry them around with you. They're really, really useful. So other things to consider when you're web conferencing, as in any office setting, you may have heard this phrase before, don't be the worst dressed person in the room. That also holds true for video conferencing. Just because you're working from home doesn't mean you should be working in your pajamas. I say this now as I'm wearing a Henley and dressed fairly casually, but if there's an important meeting you have, or if there's going to be more than just, one person in the conference, you want to make sure that you're, presenting yourself well, and that you're, dressing as if you were in the office. Even if it just means having a button-down shirt off to the side that you can quickly throw on and look halfway presentable, it goes a long way. So in terms of other things to consider for web conferencing, considering conferencing etiquette, if you're not, this is just sort of an aside, if you're not currently talking, mute yourself. It gets really confusing, and especially on a program like Zoom, where unless you have the settings changed, anytime a noise is heard, the camera switches to the person where that noise is coming from, and it can get pretty distracting. So do yourself a favor, mute yourself if you're on a web conference and you aren't speaking. In terms of working from home and phone calls, it's a good idea to have a good speakerphone. And I'm not talking about the speakerphone that's built into your phone. I'm talking about having an actual separate speakerphone. And this will be useful. I mean, you can use your AirPods or headphones or whatever you have, but having something that'll be easier for you to take notes down without having to hold up a phone, or relying on the internal microphone and speaker for your smartphone. Having something separate is going to bring that little bit of extra quality to your work and what you're able to capture from phone conversations. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. A lot of Bluetooth speakers have fairly decent microphones in them. You do want to make sure that you're doing a little bit of research to find the best ones. I'm still searching myself for some good speakerphone options. I do know one that has worked really well for me so far. This is the Bose Soundwear, and it's a unique product, because what it is it's a Bluetooth speaker that essentially goes around your neck, and it's got some high quality microphones in it. It produces a sort of a bubble of sound around your head so you can hear what's going on, but people who are in your vicinity can't. This is what I usually wear when I'm in my office, but it also can serve as a good speakerphone for when you're not in the office. Some of your smart speakers, like your Amazon Echoes, I'm not going to say the wake word, or your Apple HomePods, can also serve as good speakerphones in that respect. Another thing to consider, if you're in an office setting and you don't have your own work cell phone, something you can consider doing is signing up for a Google Voice account. They're free. Google's had this since 2009, and it's a phone forwarding service. So basically you get a phone number. You can pick whichever area code you want pretty much, or whichever locale you want. And anytime someone calls that number, it'll forward that call to whatever phone you decide, whether it's your own personal cell phone or a home phone for those of you who still have those, or your office phone. So for me, I have a Google Voice number that I put on my business cards and I have in my email signatures for work. And that forwards to my office phone at work, but as well as my cell phone. So I'm able to take work calls without needing to give out my own personal cell phone number. And what's great about Google Voice is it has its own voicemail set up, and it can send and receive text messages. So it works basically like it's your own cell phone. So that would be another good strategy if you want to try and stay as connected as you can while being out of the office. And speaking of being as connected as you can, a couple of just minor pieces I want to add just to wrap this up. Get yourself, at least if you're able to, whether you're in an apartment or a house or whatever your setup might be, a semi-permanent or semi-permanent space where you can actually get work done. For me, I have a desk set up in our media room where I spend most of my time getting work done. But if you have a smaller place, if you have like just a small apartment, try to see if you can sort of cordon off some space that you can set up just specifically for your own work, and it'll help you stay in sort of that work mindset while you're getting things done. The other thing to consider is consider a schedule. Even though you are working and you're working at home, you want to try to keep both of those lives as separate as you can. I heard, you'll hear a lot of people talk about the work-life balance. I don't necessarily like that phrase. In the field that I work in higher education, it's one of those fields where always on. You're always having to answer emails or phone calls or work on projects, things like that. But it is important to understand that work's not everything. So a phrase that I heard once that I actually really like is, instead of work-life balance, it's work-life blend. So know that you have home responsibilities, whether that's for family, for yourself, self-care, things like that, but also having work responsibilities, and just setting aside time for both of those. So knowing that, okay, when I'm on work, I'm on work, and when I'm off work, I'm off work. And just knowing when to, how to manage that. Something else that I can talk about in a future video, and I'll say it here so I don't forget it, is managing your email so that you're not just constantly stuck replying and texting throughout the day, and you can actually sort of set aside time to when you can actually get these sort of things done. And I guess with that, it's a kind of an abrupt ending, but this is my first YouTube video, so bear with me. But with that, I'll say thank you for listening to my work from home ramblings, and unfortunately I don't have a cool tagline to use to sign off, so hope everything is going well for you, and I'll see you in the next video.